The last time the World Cup was in the United States, the MLS was born. And we're about to now have the World Cup again. How do we bring our IP into unexpected places that is fun and unique and helps us articulate and communicate our story? That's what we're focused on. For the first time ever, we were able to stream a live match directly into a video game. How do we convert some of that 80 million US League Soccer viewers into people going to our matches?
I think that's super interesting, being able to drive impact from digital to physical and vice versa.
One of our big initiatives that our entire marketing department has been undertaking is...
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Speakeasy, the series where we interview innovators from across sports, entertainment and gaming. My name is Joe Condon, this is my co-host Jay Stewart, and today we're joined by Chris Blivin, VP of Consumer Products at MLS. Chris, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Amazing. So maybe just to start from the top and just give a bit of background on the MLS for us across this side of the pond, and maybe just your journey to being at the MLS, because I know it encompasses different kind of angles.
My career has been very non-traditional. It's kind of the way I always describe it. Started off going back to university, played soccer or football at the University of Rochester. All 4 years, loved it, but studied biomedical engineering, of all things. Went and worked at a startup telecommunications company for 3 years, ultimately decided that I was much more passionate and interested in the business side of everything. So I went back to Duke University, where I actually coached the men's varsity soccer team when I was there. And actually, it's funny because there are now a couple of players in Major League Soccer who I coached for a year when I was at Duke, but Brian White, Jeremy Ibuise, Sean Davis, a couple others. And so it's fun to have that personal touch point to the league itself. But obviously I always followed them when I was, even after I left Duke. But when I was at Duke, I focused on my business degree with a very much a focus on marketing and strategy. Ultimately developed a product, I put in air quotes, for Nike, which really put me down the path of realizing that sport could be more than just a hobby and an interest, but actually a career. And so I did the whole fly yourself out to Portland, Oregon, tell a bunch of people across Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, oh, I just happened to be here. Are you available for a coffee or whatever? Just so classic and stereotypical. Stayed with a friend who was already working at Nike while I was there. Unfortunately, it never panned out, as I still have yet to work for Nike, Adidas, or Under Armour. But again, it just reaffirmed that, you know what? Sports is especially the idea of leveraging people's passion points to be able to talk to them, right? It's how do you leverage someone's passion for whatever it might be, whether it be Arsenal or whether it be DC United or whether it be the Warriors or whoever it might be, right? How do you talk to those people in that moment when they're the most engaged, the most emotional, and then help, provide value in their life through a different product, right, that they might be needing? So when I was at Duke, I also created the Customer and Brand Engineering Club, which is basically a fancy way of saying, with my background of sales and marketing, ended up going to a sports marketing agency, the brand consulting division. So much of the hard part for me was breaking into sports, because guess what? Not every day you see a biomedical engineer trying to get into sports, and they're like, what are you going to do for us? Or why do you even want to be in sport? And so started off in data analytics and insights, right? Kind of a very natural math focused segue into the sports space. But I actually quickly identified gaming and esports as this emerging trend, right? This was 2015. And so from there, with the business background, I kind of built out a business plan, and the agency Lagardère Sports, now known as Sportfive, sold into them why they should be focused on this new emerging area. No one else wanted to focus on it, right? It was I always like to say that at sports marketing agencies, everybody thinks they're really cool, right? They want to be working on the NFL. They want to be working on the NBA. They want to be working on MLS, whatever it might be in the US. So for me, it was this golden opportunity in this way because also the other thing for me is, or at least when I looked around the industry, it's anyone who had been in sports started when they were 18. I was coming in at 25, 26 years old, quite old. And so for me, it was a moment to like identify something that I could uniquely own, become the subject matter expert in, and build up credibility and like build up this like unique selling proposition that I could then afford to have a seat at the table of meetings that I would have otherwise never been invited to. And so that's what started. So then I ended up going to New York kind of to be a part of the commercial team, because ultimately the way that our agency was structured, it made sense to integrate gaming and esports as more of like a lens with which new business could be driven, right? So it was either brand consulting with the esports and gaming like hint to it, right? It was experiential marketing with the gaming or esports focus. It was media rights or talent or whatever, like whatever it might be, with the esports and like or gaming like perspective on it, but not a fully dedicated division that was going to be dedicated to all of those different things across just gaming. And so that all was great. I ultimately decided that I needed a different trajectory or a different opportunity. While I love gaming and esports, I also like never wanted to go down the path of, and I probably feel this way throughout my career, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but as I look back, it's like I've had a hard time like committing myself to like one club or like one esports organization or even like one video game in that capacity. So I wanted to like remain agnostic to the kind of gaming and esports space. So I ended up going and working for a company called Genius Sports.
Sure.
For those who are unfamiliar, Genius Sports is a data aggregation company, right? They license data from each major league, sell it to a whole host of different companies. They're most known for selling the data insights and like things to sports books, but they sell it to media. They do a whole bunch. They do a lot of like personalization stuff. And so I went there and I ran their global esports betting business. And so that was a really awesome opportunity and really cool, especially like right as like COVID was happening. Ultimately from there, went to a game developer. And the really interesting thing while I was at the game developer, so I went to the game developer to like kind of like try and identify new revenue streams, like because I just had this betting background. And when I was there, I identified Web3 as this new emerging technology that might have some sort of impact, right? And where it really resonated for me, the game publisher I was at was called Motorsport Games. They developed approximately 5 to 6 different games, right? They were the official NASCAR license game. They were official IndyCar. They had like a Kartcraft. They did the Le Mans game. So they had all these different racing games. And to me, where Web3 became really compelling and interesting was that the ability to create a moat around your ecosystem. How do I incentivize someone who's playing NASCAR to want to also buy Kartcraft, right? Well, the way you do it is by saying you've put in 100 hours or 1,000 hours, right, into NASCAR. You've gotten really good. You've gotten all this cool credibility. You've got this sick livery. You've built up your equity within that game. Well, if it's through Web3, now let me port that into Kartcraft or into IndyCar or into Le Mans. So that way you're showing people that you're not just like a newbie racer. You've actually put in a lot of hours. You might be new to that game. So anyway, so I did like a whole deep dive. Again, kind of going back to the gaming and esports model, deep dive, subject matter expert, go-to-market strategy about how you integrate Web3 into this game developer. But, not just the game developer's fault, but like far ahead of the curve in this area. And like it's not lost on me how hard it is to completely like turn your entire business on its head and like integrate a new technology, right? Like this is classic innovator's dilemma, but at the same time, just like really, really, really hard. But I became so like enamored with the technology that I ultimately was able to go to Candy Digital, which was the official licensee of Major League Baseball for digital collectibles. Went there, ended up running their, what we call like Candy Racing vertical because of my racing background. So we worked with NASCAR, the Race Team Alliance, which is effectively the Players Association or the Racers Association for NASCAR. But we worked with like groups like Netflix. We worked with Getty. We worked with the WWE. We had a number of these different partners, really, really interesting partners, to develop what I would say is actually, I think NFTs and like digital collectibles get a bad rap in a lot of ways, but they're ultimately at their very base layer, digital fan engagement platforms, right? And so really loved my time there. Ultimately, crypto crashed, as you know, with all the different things. And so I was had to find a new route. I had luckily pitched the PGA Tour when I was at KD Digital. And I, soccer or football is over here for me. I'd say golf is like 2A for me, just from like a pure consumption perspective. And I have a weird knowledge of golfing history, and like Tiger Woods, like for me, I remember fourth grade, like him winning the Augusta in '96. It's just like, since then, like Tiger Woods was like my number one athlete. And so I just watched a lot of golf growing up. So was lucky enough to go over to the PGA Tour and run what they called their emerging platform partnerships group. That kind of segued into both gaming and emerging technologies. So I was responsible for overseeing everything we were doing with DraftKings around Rainmakers, the autograph, and but then that also evolved, like, again, like this is like right when AI starts becoming a thing. And so while I love golf and watching it on TV, it's very enjoyable, especially great for like a Sunday if you're like needing a nap. It's a really challenged at event property, right? Like going and watching a golf tournament when you're on location is just a challenge. You can only see, I think Ken Lovell over at the PGA Tour is like their chief technology officer. He says like at any given moment, there's like 180 different golf balls in the air at any one moment, right? Like across 18 holes. And it's like, it's crazy. Like it's funny because like the NBA always gets like highlighted as like this unbelievably technically advanced league, and they are. I'm not saying anything about that they aren't, but like the PGA Tour, the amount of technology that that group has around tracking every single golf ball, the technology of putting it into a computer so that you can watch like every single shot, whether it be on TrackMan or otherwise. They're all doing it for the most part unmanned. So you have like all these different cameras, and like they're completely mapping out every single blade of grass on the entire course. Like the amount of technology that goes into the broadcast that those guys do is unbelievable. But so anyway, so I started working on just like, how do you make the actual tournament experience better? That it kind of became like a little bit of a passion project around like a membership versus loyalty program, and like kind of the nuances that afforded, bringing that into like, how do you watch if you're on site, not off site, because like off site, there's a lot of media rights that you have to navigate, right? But if you're at the tournament, was there a way that you could empower every single person through the PGA Tour app to consume the product, right? To watch a live stream. So that way you're not missing the action, because the problem when you're there is you might be watching one hole and you might see like one good shot in the entire day. If you stay just at that one place, if you start walking around, you might see 0 good shots. But it's like, how do you empower the fan who's on site to be able to consume more of it? So I started working on like those different kind of personalization, video games, Web3, just like a whole bunch of like kind of odd things, but just all geared towards making the consumer product better. And then I thought I was going to be there for a very long time. And then I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to go to Major League Soccer in a very similar capacity, to join the consumer products team and really lead what I call their digital consumer products team. And so it is everything around video games. It is everything around Web3 and AI, but purely from a consumer product perspective, not about internal optimization, not about the field of competition. It is, how do we create something that our fans can engage with, that they can buy, that like helps them bring our product to them, and when they want to be there. Fantasy, right? Like, how do we help tell the story of all these great players that we have, these great clubs? How do we help educate them through these things? And then collectibles as well, whether that be digital collectibles through our partnership with Sweet and MLS Quest, or physical collectibles in our great partnership with Topps. And so again, it's so much of what I find myself doing on a day-to-day basis is kind of like twofold. One is like, how do we sell more jerseys? Even though my job is not to sell jerseys, it is like, how do we make our jerseys really cool and like really compelling and like culturally relevant, and make sure that we are like telling the stories of our players and of our clubs to try and show the quality and show why, if you are a fan of Arsenal in the United States, why you should also go take a look at DC United or Charlotte or Vancouver or whoever it might be. And that, this is something like, especially the at stadium experience. I just went to an Orlando match a couple weeks ago over Memorial Day weekend, and like you're there and like the purple, it's just like, it's a really, really phenomenal experience when you're at a stadium. And so, we continue to try and innovate, and we try and continue to bring that kind of like soccer culture and it really drive it into our different markets. So that was a very long-winded way of me kind of going through how I got here.
It's so cool to hear across all the different steps to get to the point that you are. But I guess a lot of it is underpinned with emerging technology and emerging platforms, but always with that consumer lens, which I guess is probably the hardest part. Like, how do you put those things in front of people and make them want it? And that's
it's funny. Like I always said, like kind of like I first started in sports through the lens of like emerging forms of entertainment. I believe that gaming and esports is, the next frontier. I believe, like, I know that gaming and esports has kind of gone through a lull over the past couple of years, kind of on the back of COVID. But, when you go back in history, one of the reasons why the NFL became so large in the United States is because of it's a perfect product for TV, right? They purposely like are able to work with commercials, the pacing for TV. Like if you go to an NFL game, it's not the most enjoyable experience. Like by far the most enjoyable live experience, I would say, of North American sports is the NHL. I think that their live experience is just phenomenal. It's so much action, constantly going. But where the NFL had a perfect product was that it was ideal for TV. And as we kind of continue to go down the future course for consumption, streaming is unquestionably like where it's all going. It's like, as I looked at it back in 2015, and I still continue to believe, what is the most endemic form of digital entertainment? To me, it's gaming, right? It's gaming and it's esports and all of that. And so I believe in the long term. So anyway, point being, started my career in sports around the what I called emerging forms of entertainment. And then when Web3 came about, I transitioned from traditional forms of entertainment to emerging forms of technology in traditional forms of entertainment.
How are you finding, because you're seeing numerous platforms, numerous technologies on a day-to-day, and figuring out how they kind of integrate into the business and how you pitch that to your fan base, let's say. How are you deciphering between something that is, a cool idea or something that is, sounds good but might not fit in, versus something that you really want to throw your weight behind and start to, really integrate into the workings of the business?
So I think it's kind of like twofold. Unequivocally, I would say, and this is a Chris Blivin belief, the MLS is a bit of a challenger brand, right? Yeah. And so with that comes a lot of benefits, right? It allows for you to take risk. It allows for you to do things that maybe the incumbents have to be a bit more conservative with. With that being said, I think the other thing that we're constantly trying to reach is scale, right? We are trying to get, so I think there's some rough number of like 80,000 or 80 million approximate what we call league soccer viewers, right? People in the United States who consume Premier League, consume MLS, consume the Bundesliga, La Liga, all of that. And so ultimately the question is, how do we do things that either highlight our quality and then convert them through that funnel, or allow for us to push barriers and really drive and like reach new audiences that might like have never considered us before. And so, I would say you see that in my role specifically, in kind of like a duopoly, in that like EA, phenomenal partnership, right? FC reaches 250 million or some ridiculous number of gamers globally, right? So for MLS to be a part of EA is critically important for us. I remember when I was 10, 14 years old playing back then FIFA, there was this one French club called like Valenciennes or something. It is French. I do not speak French. I do not know the proper pronunciation, but they were the worst club in the French League Two. And I took it upon myself to become that club, to be the manager of that club, so I could build them to League One glory, right? And I think of that kind of like, I know I'm not alone, right? So many people, I think, learn about football through games or through the NFL, through games, or through any sport in particular, through these world-class games. And so for us to have, the authenticity to be a part of FC, right? To have our players integrated, to have our clubs represented through their jerseys and their kits and everything, through their stadiums, like these are critically important things for us to do to make sure that we can reach as many players as possible globally, right? And how do we highlight a Korean player who might be in our league to Korea, right? And like, how do we try and tell those stories better and try and leverage all of this great storytelling that we have in front of us through our partners? On the flip side, right, we also have MLS Quest through our great partner in Suite. This is a tech-focused, this is a tech product, right? This is a digital collectible, a Web3 thing. This is an entirely different audience that we also believe is ripe for wanting to celebrate our history, celebrate our best moments, collect or engage with our brand in an entirely different way through this digital engagement platform. And there's just so many different nuances to that, right? And so, there's both scale, there's both innovation, and I'm constantly I'm very lucky. I think a lot of MLS, or a lot of the people at MLS are focused so heavily on filling butts and seats, right? Our experiences are really great. Go to our matches and you'll have a great time. I guarantee it. But it is so much, again, of how do we convert some of that 80 million US league soccer viewers into people going to our matches? I am lucky through the perspective that digital doesn't have borders. I can speak, through our partnership with So Rare, right? We're doing fantasy Web3 collectibles, for a company that's based in Paris that has a massive network within all of soccer fans across Europe and internationally. It's for us to be a part of that and for us to have the opportunity to speak and educate the world about our talent and our quality, that's an amazing thing. And so, I always I understand the drumbeat of focus on the US, but the thing I try and reiterate internally is completely agree, but we shouldn't just limit ourselves to the US. We have so much opportunity to go global.
It's having that variety of touch points and variety of products, I guess, that lends itself to different audiences. And to the point you were making, I had friends when I was growing up would not kick a ball, would be able to recite to you a third division French league because they took them exactly like you did from the bottom to glory. And I think it's around finding those different ways for people to interact with the brand, which is, traditionally it's been through playing, actually kicking the ball and, coming through grassroots. But that still exists and it's still a great route for people, or pathway for people to get into the game. But more and more, as we move down a digital kind of route, people are interacting that way, whether it's through content, through games, whatever else. And I'm intrigued, how much of that thinking you guys have is, obviously you want to keep that physical playing element, but then also, appeal to that wider audience that perhaps, love the sport or love, the MLS, but aren't interested in playing physically.
So much of what I focus on when I'm looking for new partners is specific, especially around gaming, is specifically how do I get our IP in front of an audience? I was just recently with the Adidas gaming team. It's these unexpected delights, right? It's how do we show up unexpectedly in really cool other areas? Yeah. So, through our partnership with EA, one thing that I've gone to them with, and again, kind of my world of golf and now football, I've always loved Golf Clash. I thought it was a phenomenal game. It's absolutely massive, right? It definitely makes you want to rage quit a couple of times, no doubt. And I think I've probably smashed one too many phones on it. But why wouldn't we, or why shouldn't we, strive for having the 30th season MLS soccer ball as a golf ball in the game, right? How do we bring our IP into unexpected places that is fun and unique and helps us articulate and communicate our story, right? and you can just imagine, right? Again, with EA, because they're such a great partner of ours, but like The Sims is a completely crazy different game, right? That is it's not a metaverse, but it's pretty close to how these people experience like their like everyday life in this entirely virtual world. Like, why aren't our jerseys showing up in The Sims? And then like, I kind of go to the farthest version of this spectrum, which is like Candy Crush or even like Solitaire. It's like, how do we get a deck of cards digitally in like a game like of Solitaire where we can just have like, if your favorite club is Inter Miami or if your favorite club is Charlotte, like why can't I have just a deck of cards for Solitaire and like be working in that world? And like, those are all again, like the more scale and the bigger opportunity that we can have to provide our fans with the opportunity to celebrate their fandom. Like that's what we're focused on.
You talked around being a challenger brand, and I guess like the flexibility to some degree that gives you that perhaps, older leagues perhaps don't have the ability to do.
Yeah.
How much of your thinking is around, changing the image, I guess, of the MLS? And it's gone through quite a change over the last 5-10 years, let's say, to where you are now.
I candidly don't think about changing perception, right? That's certainly not my job.
But I guess like some of the products that you put out do change the perceptions. Maybe not
said differently, right? So said differently, like, so two things, right? I think it's really easy to forget that MLS is only 30 years old, right? Which is like crazy young, especially in the world of sport, right? And it takes such a long time to build up the heritage and the history of a league, of a club, all that, right? Like in our 30th season, we just launched our 30th club, right, with San Diego. And so when we focus on perception, it's mostly how do I make sure that we are able to articulate the storytelling of the quality of our players? Because at the end of the day, I think that, people want to watch, particularly in the United States, but like people want to watch the best, right? And they want to see, I would say sport broadly is about people seeing the pinnacle of the sport performing at the highest level, right? And so as we create these different products, as we create the stories and like as we create the products that our fan bases can engage with, it is all about how do we enable our licensees, our partners to help us tell that story, right? And it's a two-way street. And so we're very lucky in that I think if a partner is coming to us, they also believe in that vision and they believe in that upside and they believe in helping us articulate that. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to partner with us. And so, it's that. I mean, the crazy thing is, like, remind people this as much as I can. It's like the last time the World Cup was in the United States, the MLS was born. And we're about to now have the World Cup again in our 31st season. So that's next year. And like, I can't even imagine like what's going to happen. Hopefully MLS won't be reborn. I think we're pretty, we're set, but it is all about putting in place ahead of the World Cup, what I call like kind of like the butterfly nets or like the funnels to be able to capitalize on that fandom and in that interest of soccer next year and help drive people to our local clubs, to our local markets, and be able to highlight and showcase just how good our clubs and our players are during that moment.
So is there a fair amount of collaboration with the USA Soccer guys or with the idea of the national team? I mean, obviously, if you have your players on the national team, I mean, it's a phenomenal opportunity for, especially if the U.S. does well.
It's funny.
For that league.
Yeah, so obviously we love the people over at USA Soccer. They do a phenomenal job helping grow the game, right? It's particularly like obviously MLS has a lot of youth development programs with MLS Go, reaching a ton of different kids. We have the MLS Next and the MLS Next Pro, right? Is kind of like our pathway to a Major League Soccer. And we're able to reach something ridiculous number like, 50,000 to 100,000 kids across the United States. And so that's all fantastic. USA Soccer also does a ton when it comes to helping grow the game domestically through their coaches and through setting up a lot of infrastructure. And like our relationship with them is like really strong because of all that.
where are you thinking that the MLS could or can lead kind of, other sports brands as opposed to following?
One area, and I think it's probably because of me sitting in the consumer product side of thing and having that kind of dual nature of my role of digital and physical. So much of where I think that I would love to see us go and like work with, whether that be our app or whether that be like all these different, is like the technology bringing the physical jerseys into the digital ecosystems and vice versa. So like, I'm really bullish on how do you create a token gated website that you could only get access to by going and engaging with MLS Quest in some capacity, that then grants you access to a limited edition product, right? Done by Adidas, and really like creating some sort of like really unique experience, right? And then vice versa. Like, how do we enable you go and buy our jersey? That takes you into a digital thing. Congratulations, you now own the 30th season limited edition MLS jersey. Go and, subscribe to MLS Season Pass and like go and watch, our matches, and like doing all of those things is really where I would love to see from an innovation perspective. Like, how are we closing the circle, right? And making it like a flywheel, right? How are you creating this digital community that is incredibly additive, and like you're helping drive them from one digital experience to a physical, to a digital, to a physical, that is not cumbersome and not just like gamified, but like genuinely enhances the fan experience and like how they engage with the league, but also their clubs and their players.
How valuable is that from a league perspective to understand where and how a consumer is engaging across all those different touch points? And I guess we've had conversations in the past, but once you have got that insight, what power does that give you in terms of going out to new partners or, anyone like that, so that you've got that, insight to be able to tell them this is exactly what people are doing. Here's where we're seeing, them do X, Y, and Z. And then how much does that, I guess, advise some of your product kind of roadmap as well?
One of our big initiatives that our entire marketing department has been undertaking is, how do we get smarter on our fan base, right? I think the more you know, the more you can do things with that, right? So if we understand what our customer, does at different touch points, then we can leverage that to make sure that we're talking to them at the relevant times, that we're pushing the right things, that we are reminding them to tune in for a match, right? It's so much about like, people's businesses are live, people's lives are busy. And so how do we make sure that we are speaking to them and engaging with them at relevant points throughout their day, their week, their month, whatever it might be, right? If they have left the ecosystem, how do we re-engage them and bring them back in? How do we, one fun game business that I'm kind of talking to at the moment, they're talking about like bringing games into like schools, right? So it's like, if now we know that you're engaged because of your school in this really interesting MLS game, right? And then the mom has this portal, or the dad has the portal on the back end, and then we get access to that data, and we know that this family has 3 kids in this school system from 4 to 16. Like, how do we then reward the family? It's like, come to this game on us. Like, we know it's your kid's birthday. Like, just how do you try and make sure that you are engaging with the audience and the fan base in ways that are super relevant? To the point about partners, like, I think that, that's everyone's kind of like goal, and how I got into this is just like, how do you leverage people's passion points at relevant times, right? Like, everyone's been hit up, with a spam call, and you're like, leave me alone. Like, that is not the goal. But yeah, I always think the more that we can show that we know our fans, the more that we bring value to them, then you're just going to see the benefits of that.
As a sort of a challenger brand, you would have the opportunity to engage fans as people that are coming along with you in a journey that is young, rather than saying, oh, I follow the NFL. Okay. Everybody in America watches the NFL. Or I'm a Red Sox fan. Great.
Right.
People have been Red Sox fans forever. but with MLS,
Yep.
you could get a generation or a group of people and say, look, I'm an MLS fan. It's something new. It's something fresh. It's something cool.
Yeah.
And perhaps there's a way to use digital products or digital culture that would align with that kind of coolness or distinctive way of being.
Yeah. I mean, when I was at Candy Digital, one of the products I wanted to develop and would still welcome anyone to develop this product was like the idea of like a fan passport, right? I know there's a bunch of different people out there who are building similar products, but it's like, at the end of the day, you kind of want to know what your record is when you go to a tournament or to a match, right? And so like, I always thought it'd be really fun. It's like, oh, Chris Blivin, I'll just use San Diego since they just started this year, right? San Diego started in 2025. You were there, you had the first season pass, heroes like your thing. And like, to be fair, the NBA has done some of this, and shout out to their team, like where they're doing this like digital fan passport that like involves as you engage with the NBA app, and like they're doing some really interesting stuff there. But it's like, what's your record, right? It's like, if I was a fan, if I went to the very first San Diego match, like who scored, how many goals were there? Like what was my, like what's Chris Blivin's expected win record, right? What's my WAR? What's my WAR?
Don't invite him to the next game.
Don't let him in.
Not this guy.
The score's too bad.
That's exactly right. It's like, why should I have to pay you to stay away?
Yeah.
But it's like, what's your expected win record, right? Above, like, what's your expected win that's above replacement compared to the other fan next to you, right? And there's just like so many fun nuances there. It's like, I always think of it back like when I would go to Dave Matthews Band concerts, right? And you have the full set list of every concert you've ever gone to. And it's like, tick, 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 tick. I've seen this one twice. And like, but it's like, all right, I've seen this player play. I've seen this many assists. I've seen this many goals. I've seen like all of these different things. I finally remember what we were talking about earlier. And one thing that you were asking was about how the U.S. men's national team and how the players playing in MLS could help grow based on the relationship with the U.S. soccer. One of the facts that I think most people don't even know about MLS is that in the last World Cup, we had more players playing in the World Cup than any other league in the world, because we draw on players across all of Latin America, across Asia, across Europe, across the US. We have Canada, we have the United States, like we have Puerto Rico. Like, so the one thing that I think we need to do a better job of is articulating. It's like, we've got quality from around the world. You're going to see more players who will be competing in the World Cup in 2026 that play in MLS than any other league. And that it's a function of some of the fun math, right? If you go to the Premier League, most of their players are probably going to be from England, and there's only so many slots, right? Or they're going to be playing in Spain, or they're selecting from a much smaller country group and then they only allow a certain number of teams. But from like UEFA versus like CONMEBOL and all those different groups. So one of the things though that we are definitely working on for this next year is like the whole like clubbing country mentality of like, watch them before the World Cup, watch them after the World Cup, because you're going to see more World Cup talent in this league than anywhere else. And so that is also one area where, like, yes, it'll be great if the U.S. men's national team goes really well. Like, unquestionably, the better the U.S. men's national team does in the World Cup will be better for interest in soccer in the United States, bar none. But if they don't perform to, our expectations, there's still going to be a lot of opportunities for Major League Soccer to still be able to leverage the interest in, whether it be Korea, whether it be Japan, whether it be Colombia, whether it be Mexico, whether it be like any of these other countries. If they do really well, we can still capitalize on so much of that interest and fan base in a way that not as many leagues around the world can do.
Yeah, really cool. Maybe just to move it on slightly, I would love to dive into what you guys have recently done with EA and with Apple, because it's a first as far as I know.
As far as I know, also.
Yeah. And super, super interesting. So I'd love to dive into that more. And I guess like the process of you getting there, and I guess some of the rationale behind why you've kind of done what you've done.
So we're super lucky. Apple is a world-class partner, right? through them, we can do things that virtually no other league can do because they own or they have our global media rights, right? So through our partnership with Apple, and as we continue to work with them and figure out how to engage the most amount of fans, we can unlock things that no one else can do. We can stream a match through Apple in Australia. We can stream a match in London, right? We can stream a match in Brazil, all because of Apple. Whereas like if you were the NFL, you'd have to go through Sky, you'd have to go through Canal, you'd have to go through all of these different media entities, and trying to be able to get one platform that can stream anything in all those different places, impossible, right? Or very unlikely. So as part of so much of what we're trying to do about just like educating people about MLS Season Pass and like where to get it and all these things, Apple and EA last year did a redemption program, like sign up, get 1 month for free. And it was the highest performing redemption that we had done across the board. And so on the back of that, this year, there was an interest in diving deeper, right? And so then that kind of is like, well, what does deeper mean, right? How can we be innovative? How do we leverage this unique global ability that EA has, or that Apple affords us? Mm-hmm. And so I think the natural just next step was like, well, what if we stream a game directly on your platform? And so to your point, to the best of my knowledge, for the first time ever, we were able to stream a live match directly into a video game, right? And it was FC Mobile. So it reached fans globally. Anyone who had downloaded the game FC Mobile on their phone, all they had to do was open up the game, and right on like the main home screen, there was a thing like live match, click through, and you could have been watching a MLS match from anywhere in the world. And so, yeah, it was a really, really exciting moment, and something that, candidly, really proud to have been just a small piece in a much bigger innovation. But yeah, it was really exciting.
And technically, it went smoothly. It's trying to know. It's a big a lot of challenges.
No. I was gonna say, we have all these like really lofty goals and high standards and all things, and we talked to the EA team. They're like, look, it went off without a hitch, not a single technical issue. You don't even understand how hard it is just to get the first one. Like, you can do as many tests as you want. We have our broadcast team, the FC Mobiles team, Apple, like the amount of people and the amount of hours on it was a Herculean effort to get it all done. And on the timeline that we had, like the aggressive timeline that we had set for May, because like this thing started back in like January, let's call it. So to get all of that done in like a effectively 4-month period is like really impressive. But yes, to your question about success, like I think the very first line of success was launching no hitch whatsoever, and like it passed with flying colors. And so we were all really ecstatic to see it be so successful, to get the amount of viewers, the global viewers that we were able to do. Icing on the cake for the first two when you're just like trying to like get through the door. And now I think it's just, how do we continue to push the boundaries? How do we drive more interest? How do we make sure that we're articulating and communicating to all these different audiences this unique opportunity? But yeah, I get something that we were really pleased with. The EA team was really pleased with. The Apple team's been really pleased with. And I would, we have 2 more guaranteed coming up in September. So we're going to be doing this again in September. And then we'll see if from there, like how many more of these we do. But it's certainly like, as we continue just to expand the awareness and driving subscriptions to Apple and MLS Season Pass, like you want to be where the audience is.
And as we know, a lot of people talk about younger generations having no attention span. So I'm intrigued, like, how have you seen people engaging with the content when it's streamed through the game, and whether it's, whether you think it's more that younger generations don't have, they don't have the attention spans, or whether it's just around they need to be interested in something to actually warrant the time that they're going to put towards that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that through a platform like a video game, right, where I would say the consumer base is more used to or like primed to be more active, right? It's a video game. You're interested in being active. You're playing. You're engaging. All those different things. Versus a passive, right? When you're watching TV and when you're watching a live stream, you're not fully immersive, right? You're not doing a lot as part of like the consumption. And so to your point, like the viewership time on those streams was definitely lower than probably, and candidly, I don't have all the numbers, right?
Sure.
So like I can imagine though that the average viewer time on like a regular television set through streaming Apple or MLS season pass versus the in-app, you imagine the app is going to be shorter. For that exact reason, we also did have a highlights package within the game, right? So before, there's obviously like a hype video. After the streams, we also then had a highlights package where you could go in and kind of like watch the 3-minute version of the match and like really consume it in a different way. And I think that we had a really good response and a lot of views of those different highlight packages. But yes, like you can imagine someone opening their phone and being like, I'm here to play.
Yeah.
So, and so like they'll watch it. It's like a novelty. They'll engage, but then, but yeah, the amount, as you could imagine, the focus of the entire thing was around driving interest in MLS season pass. And we did see a significant number of people convert from, seeing it, clicking on the MLS season pass subscription and like going through that user flow in a number that was like really impressive.
Yeah. I think that's super interesting, being able to drive impact from digital to physical and vice versa. Like it's the kind of holy grail for a lot of brands. I guess, it's always a starting point, and, people will build habit as they go. Like the longer you guys do it, the more people understand that that's a medium that they can consume that kind of content through. And it's not just going there to play the game, but they could also watch. So that's super, super interesting. Maybe just to round stuff off, I would love to kind of get your opinion on, if you're an emerging tech company or if you're a game developer or someone that's wanting to work with a sports IP, what do they need to understand about how a sports IP operates? And, it's very different. You're very,
of course.
But like, what are the things that they should understand about how the industry works, or perhaps, what the goals of the large majority of sports IP is at the minute to be able to do?
Yeah, I mean, of course, every IP has their nuances. As well, like licensing is very different from like sponsorship, right? Which is like very different from like all these other different spaces. When it's always like a bit of a catch-22, right? As I mentioned to you about the dichotomy of scale versus innovation, right? And it's something that is always a challenge, right? Because if you come to us with all the scale, that's phenomenal, and you're going to be able to command a different kind of like terms or value proposition than if you're coming in with innovation.
Yeah,
I think when it comes to a startup or whoever it might be, and like you're looking at the more of the innovation side of things, it is really going to be communicating how you are going to drive interest and engagement with a new audience, right? Because I think a small innovation in a space where there's already like the same audience, I don't think changes much, right? I think it has to be something that's, kind of completely different. Like who is an audience that MLS hasn't historically talked to? Yeah. And why will your product or your innovation or whatever it might be make MLS relevant in that new audience? And, that would be something that we would all be super interested in.
It needs to really shift the needle a bit, I guess. We had another guest on recently, and he kind of pinned it down to 3 things. It needs to either make money, save money, or engage fans in a different way. That comes back to how do you make more money too. So I think those 3 things are pretty much what everyone is focused on. Whatever lens you come in from, that's pretty much what it comes down to.
And trying to find new for new.
Yeah.
As opposed to using old for trying to get new people or new to try to get the people that are already with the other leagues. Yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of an alignment of innovation and new fans, as you said. Yeah.
it's so critical, especially with the challenger brand, right? Like, and like, I use the term like elusive. Like, we're obviously like a very premium brand. Like, we know who we are, but like, if you are bringing something new to us, it's like, let's figure out how we leverage that. Like, so like, domestically, like, how does our product help us communicate with a Spanish audience, right? That maybe we're already really fans with, but like, how do we then learn their culture, their interests? How do we connect with them in a way that we have not historically been connecting with them, right? Like, how does that work? Or any different audience, right? How do we then also reach deeper into different demographics, right? Or like, how do we communicate to, you know, Europe about different interests, about why MLS is like really valuable and a really like high quality product that you should be caring about. So it's always trying to figure out, you know, it's either scale or it's innovation, and like it's all about audience engagement, but different forms of it. And like, how do we make sure we're talking to anyone who might be interested in soccer generally?
It's a trade-off, I guess, right?
It really is.
Yeah. No, amazing. Chris, thank you so much.
Yeah, no,
I've loved doing this.
Chris.
Jay, thanks for joining me, and thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.